Looks like it's taking its time, so we can get started. I hesitate to say nasty because I haven't ever really paid much time to pronouncing the thing, but I do think that I can give you a story of success, which is basically my story, as long as my dogs get out of the screen. There we are. So the title of my talk, as you may have seen the programs, is Language Revitalization, Success Story from Spain. So that's where I am from. And basically, one thing people don't know about Spain is that, yeah, Spanish is our mother language, our official language, not everywhere. And there is where I want to go, if I can manage this. So there we are. First of all, my name, my official Spanish name is Olga Sofia Lijo Serans, as you see it there. If I were back home where I grew up and I introduced myself like that, I would get probably the same thing that I could get here, which could be something like, "Oh, very nice to meet you," and then the person could, turn around and think, and I'm not gonna even try to remember that. If instead I say, "Hi, eu sou Olga, neta de carne do coxo," then the person's eyes could lit up. He or she could probably give me like my family heritage for 2 or 3 generations, half of my life story, and probably end up with something like, "Yeah, you're the crazy one that moved to Alaska." Why the change? Right now, by saying I'm Olga neta de carne do coxo, I have vowed to my tradition. My tradition, family is very important. So I just told the person that the degree, the family degree in which I am related to Carne do Coxo, who is the most well-known elder in my family. And then there may be many Carmens around there, but there is only one Carne do Coxo. It's Carmen of the limp ones, or the limp family. And it is our way to identify uniquely each family around. So, a second thing, I said all that in Galician. I didn't say anything like that in Spanish. If I were to say that in Spanish, the person looking at me would like raise an eyebrow and say, yeah, so you know the tradition, but you do not feel it. You don't have it inside you. So I said, from Spain, Galicia is around here, on that corner, on top of Portugal. And it's just shy of 3 million people. And Galician is spoken basically all over the area, also some of the more occidental areas in the border regions. I won't say that all of us speak Galician. I would love to say that. I would say that 95% of us understand it, maybe 85% feel comfortable writing it if needed be. I'd say that maybe 70% actually speak it on a day-to-day basis. So we aren't completely there yet, but we are almost there. So why do we say that this was a revitalization program here? Well, first of all, many people ask me, oh, is it really that Spanish and Galician are different languages? Both of them come from Latin, you're very near each other, so I thought I could give you an example. Those two sentences mean exactly the same. Yo ya había buscado setas en ese área antes y jamás me había encontrado zorros. It's in Spanish. Eu xa andivera os cogumelos antes e non topara raposos xamais. It's in Galician. It means I had already been mushroom hunting there and I had never found foxes there. I know it's kind of funky, but it's difficult to come up with a sentence that actually reflects so many differences. First of all, you have vocabulary, like mushrooms in Spanish is setas, in Galician is cogumelos, or fox is zorro in Spanish, and raposo in Galician. You have also phonetic differences. The sound represented by the J in Spanish doesn't exist at all in Galician. Actually, in standard Galician, we don't even have that letter. Meanwhile, the sound represented by the X in Galician doesn't exist either in Spanish. And then a third difference, which is grammatical, vocabulary, phonetics, and now grammatical, would be in the verbs. In Spanish, you have basically compound verbs like the English ones. I have looked, I have played, which is había buscado. In Galician, we don't have those. We basically have our one-word verbs to represent all verbal tenses possible. So that's basically some of the differences. So there are many, not many, but there were different times in history when the Spanish powers tried to crush Galician culture, and with Galician culture, of course, Galician language. But I'm only going to talk about the last instance, which was during the Franco dictatorship during most of the 20th century, from basically the end of the 30s to 1975. And actually, the crash of the language started even before the dictatorship was consolidated. The two factions were still at war, and the faction that ended up grabbing power already made edicts forbidding public expression of regional cultural elements. And of course, the most public expression of any culture is language in many cases. I won't say that there were laws specifically targeting language. It was just that it was the one that you were more likely to be caught on. So, and if you wanted to be anybody, you didn't speak Galician. That's it. You wanted to go into politics, you didn't speak Galician. You wanted to be able to talk in public, you didn't speak Galician, because automatically, if you had any enemies, you could be accused of being subversive. Why should you be talking in that language if you don't have anything to hide? At the governmental levels, there were many other instances in which the language was prohibited or obliterated in a way. For instance, and I must say that not everybody in Spain believes that the Franco dictatorship was wrong or bad for the country. Don't ask my dad. You don't want it. And there were some things that were actually done pretty well. Universal social security system was implemented at that time. Health safety was implemented at that time. The universal schooling for all children was implemented at that time. Hey, great. You know, what could be better than giving free schooling to every child in the country? Of course, it was free schooling in Spanish. So all that generation grew up knowing that speaking Galician was bad. And of course, even if you were like isolated in a small village, you didn't want to have any like real good profession or going into politics. At one point or other, you would have to go talk to the doctor, talk to the priest, talk to the teacher. You would have to do it in Spanish. As you see there, I brought some examples, some other examples in which Spanish just substituted Galician. One of them was place names. The first place name that I put there, O Niño Dalia, is actually a real example. And it was translated into El Niño de la Guía. Wow, doesn't seem that different, doesn't seem such a big deal. Well, El Niño de la Guía, the Spanish equivalent, actually means the boy of the guide. Or what you want to make about that is up to you. We are still guessing what it means. O Niño Dalia, which is the Galician name, means eagle's nest. The second example that I'm giving you, Carballosa, is actually the name of my village. My village grew up out of just a bunch of properties, farming properties. And it was very recent. It actually basically was named during the Franco dictatorship. In a way, we were lucky because in Carballosa, Carballo actually means oak in Galician. And I did say that the government did try to get rid of Galician in every instance possible. I didn't say that all the governmental officials knew that much about language. So the guy that actually said, oh yeah, go ahead, can't be named like that, didn't really realize that Carballo was a Galician name. But he did give the name a Spanish ending, Carballosa. And basically that would mean an oak grove, an oak wood. So we ended up having this name of a village that is not, not one thing, not the other. In Galician, it could be Carballeira. In Spanish, it could be Robredal. Thankfully, we didn't end up with Robredal, but we did. We will never have like the real name of the village because, well, it was born with that name. Other instances, personal names, like all of a sudden all Shans were Juans, all Marushas were Marias, and all Lucias were Eugenias. So things got pretty nasty with Galician. It did look like it was about to die. We were actually pretty lucky, I could say, because what happened in our case was that during the time of the dictatorship, there was actually a pretty active political movement against the dictatorship. They were mostly incarcerated or out of the country. But they were there, and every time that they could speak up, they could make the point that it was very important to give people a real sense of belonging, to respect their regional and their traditional sense, their traditions. So while Franco was inside the country just trying to obliterate everything, you had all these politicians trying to figure out ways to make things better for the Spanish population. And then, of course, Franco was not immortal. He had a plan. He decided that after him there was going to be a monarchy. So he trained Prince Juan Carlos in what he wanted the country to be, and put things in place so that when he died, Juan Carlos could become king. He did. I'm happy to report that Franco died a month before I was born, so I never had to experience the dictatorship. What happened, something that Franco had not previewed, was that the king had gone along with what he said, but he didn't think the same. So Juan Carlos I, who is still the king of Spain, got crowned, and the first thing he did was giving all those politicians that had been out of the country the opportunity to get together and draft a constitution. One of the most important parts of that constitution is that it gives regions in Spain a huge amount of leeway in setting a lot of their policies, especially culturally. So by, I don't know, maybe 8 years later, regions like Spain had drafted their own rule, regions like Galicia, you have also Catalonia, the Basque Country, had drafted their own rules, which included revitalizing the language. So, in a way, the same methods that had been used to eradicate Galician were used to bring it back. By the time I was in 3rd grade, I was studying English language and Galician language and Galician literature at school. It wasn't easy. I mean, it was rough going because all those teachers that were teaching during the Franco era were not just giving the book. And you know, a new crop of teachers knowing Galician rules grew up. They had to, little by little, get in there. But we did get schooling in Galician. Little by little, there were more rules about the fact that if I go to any governmental agency in Galicia, I have a right to be talked to in Galician, if that's what I want. Any governmental member of staff has to have at least a passing knowledge of Galician. And all those little things about place names and personal names went back to what they were. So I'm happy to report that O Niño Dalia is again the eagle's nest. And I know that there is a the case of Galician is very different because there was a very homogeneous population that just went back to what they were instead of being sprinkled along among other populations. But it is also true that we didn't have people like Alistair recording people in their own homes and developing language learning programs. So there is a little bit of everything, and I do think that Tlingit is in a very good position to come back to. Anybody has any questions?
Aren't there many signages in Galician around the province?
Yeah, and actually nowadays what happens mostly is you may have place names in both languages. You either have it in Galician or you have it in both languages. You will not have place names only in Spanish at all.
I just wanted to comment that I think you're very lucky that Franco died when he did.
I think so too.
Yeah, you had a chance to get that language back while it was still spoken. So, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Could you maybe talk again a little more about the teachers in the schools using Galician? Because I think that's one thing that to have that happen here would take quite a bit of work.
Yeah. Basically, at the time in which the new constitution was drafted, most teachers did not speak Galician at all. Or if they did, it was kind of a shame. It was something that you only kept at home. So there are actually two problems there. One of them was they didn't have the training to teach Galician. They barely had the training to teach languages that were officially taught. And another thing was that until that moment, it was shameful for a teacher to speak that language. So it did take some time for teachers to develop a sense of what they had to teach and how they had to teach it. And I would say that thankfully they started with the smaller kids, teaching the most basic parts. And then in a way, also the way in which Nina was talking, they learned also as they were teaching. So as I said, it took time. Not all of them were able to figure things out straight away. And actually, you don't need them to know exactly how the language goes exactly. For instance, one of the problems with having Galician institutionalized in a way that we have now is that there is a standard Galician. There are many dialects of Galician, but there is a standard Galician. And it looks like every time a new political party goes into the government, they think that they have to fix the standard Galician, which is a problem. I mean, you're a teacher, a high school teacher, and all of a sudden they give you this new standard that you have to teach. That's a problem, but what I learned is that all the other bits and pieces of Galician recovery are obliterating that problem because we feel proud not only of speaking Galician but also of speaking in the way we learned at home. One of the things I do, for instance, I have friends that I met at college who are from different regions of Galicia who have different dialects. We don't even try to speak the same dialect of Galician. We just speaking whatever feels natural. Everybody's proud, everybody understands each other, and everybody feels a sense of belonging. So the teachers are important. I would say that it's even more important to have a pride on what you learn. Anything else? Okay. Uh-oh.